I was born in Texas, but I grew up in Arkansas and went to college in Arkansas, and then moved to Boston after college.
So pretty much right out of college, came to Boston.
Yes.
Okay. But while you were in Arkansas, you went out to some. There was one bar where you lived, right?
I think so. There was one main club bar called Discovery in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Discovery. Okay, so that's where you first started going out to bars.
Yes, and I went basically 10 minutes after I turned 21.
So you never tried to get in there when you were under 21?
No.
Okay. So you turned 21, you went to Discovery, and what were your impressions of the clientele, the music, all that stuff?
The clientele was a real mix of everyone, ages, all kinds of different people in the community. I guess everybody went there.
Right.
And there was one room for drag shows, which were really cool. That was probably my first time seeing real drag shows like that.
Right.
And I remember the dance. I remember the big song then was "Pride, a Deeper Love."
Okay, not
in '94. That's when.
Yeah. Okay, that would be. Yeah. So that was a big song, and it was all kind of vocal house music.
Yes.
Pretty commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it was good.
Right. So was that where you first got the inkling that you might want to DJ, or did it take longer for that to develop?
I did. I had always wanted to DJ. I had already DJed before that, though.
Right.
And I'd done. I guess the very first time I DJed live for people was my sophomore year of college, DJing an '80s dance. Kind of a campus-wide 80s dance.
Oh, right.
Because I had been collecting a lot of 80s vinyl just for the fun of it, and it was, it's very cheap, like $1 a record.
Right.
But after accumulating some of it, I wanted to play it somewhere, and so I, along with my friends, we organized this dance, thinking it might just be us, but it would be fun. But it ended up being kind of the whole campus coming.
Right. And what kind of equipment were you using?
Turntables from. Did we work from the radio station? I'm not sure. There were 2 turntables and a mixer. It was pretty basic.
But there was no real. You weren't really concerned about beat matching or anything.
No,
of that stuff?
I didn't know. I had no clue about beat matching.
So you were just transitioning from record to record.
Yes.
Which is probably fine for that kind of a.
It was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now, what did you learn from doing that kind of a party? I mean, do you remember learning anything about that was useful later on?
Crowd pleasing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Just, playing certain songs and getting... or also trusting your instincts about what you think people would love to hear, what would surprise them. And I think I still use that today. I think, what would I want to hear going out to a club, and what would be a surprise to me?
Right.
A lot of people go out and they have 5 songs they want to hear every place they go, it seems.
Right.
I actually like being... And I do too, I guess, but I really like being surprised also. Maybe equally as much, so... Well, I moved to London for 6 months before coming to Boston. And I didn't DJ at all in London, but I did go out.
You went out a lot in London. Yes. And what was that experience like coming from Arkansas? That must have been...
It was very exciting. Partly because it was my first time to live away from Arkansas on my own, and it was a huge city. But also because all the music that I liked was from London at that time. So that was like going to Mecca for me.
Yeah.
Musically.
Right, because that was like the mid-90s was like the peak of like house and like kind of...
And all the pop bands I liked, the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, all of that.
Yeah, that was pretty...
Boston, I've always wondered if Boston was kind of a subconscious choice, because Boston, I think, is most like London. The city in the U.S. that's most like Europe and most like London, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of places it even looks like London here.
Right.
So maybe that was subconscious, but I was drawn to Boston, and I did just jump.
So there wasn't any kind of like other motivating factor for Boston. You just kind of like had a sort of an intuition about it.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
There was no other real reason.
No, so you didn't know anybody else here?
Well, I did know a good friend of mine had gone to grad school here, and I had helped him move here. Okay. So I had been to Boston. It had never occurred to me to live here.
Right. So 6 months in London, you hear a lot of great stuff, and it sort of can, I guess, does this solidify your desire that you want to be a DJ at some point? Is this like where it really starts to seem like you really would like to?
I don't know. I think for a while after moving here, I didn't think about it as much. I did go out a lot after moving here. The first club I ever went to was Man Ray Campus Thursday, which was amazing. That was really the kind of music and crowd I was into.
And Man Ray Campus was 2 rooms.
Yes.
Campus was in the front room. This was in Cambridge. And
Campus was in the back. It was the back room.
Was it? Oh, maybe.
Well, Campus was the whole night, but the back room was Chris Ewan, and the front room was the Euro House.
Right.
Music.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I always thought they called the front one thing in the back. Well, anyway, so that was that was a formative place for a lot of people. I mean, that
Definitely.
was where a lot of people came out.
And a lot of the people I know now, that's where we all kind of got our start.
Now, did you,
I do, and you know, it's strange because at the time I didn't think about it, and when I actually started DJing, I was more one thing. But I think that probably is naturally what I'm drawn to more. So, and that's certainly what I do now. But I think when I did finally start DJing, and for years, I was kind of stuck in one genre or another. But I think, like you say, like the thing they had at Man Ray, and that I like both sides of it is actually my taste.
right? So that's when you DJ, you sort of blend those things together a bit more in terms of
The way you know, at Man Ray they would play, you know, older kind of new wave stuff with the new electronic and pop and, you know, even Madonna in the back room, and mix it all together and kind of make it work. And it does, and especially now when you have music that references the 90s and you can play it with the music from the 90s. It all fits together nicely.
And this was Chris Ewan, of course, in the back room, who influenced a lot of people.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so you're going out, but you're not really thinking about DJing.
Not for a while.
So what year are we talking about? This is when you first came to Boston in the first few years?
96. So for about I probably bought my first DJ equipment in 99 or 2000.
Okay.
And it was just a really basic CD DJ setup with hardly any pitch control.
Right.
It was difficult to learn on, but it was, you know, but you could get the basics.
Yeah.
And then after doing that for a while, I knew I needed better equipment, and I did get turntables after that.
Vinyl turntables? Okay, right. So did you
I started collecting more vinyl.
And you started collecting more vinyl. And this is kind of around the time that CDs are becoming a standard sort of thing, right? So the decision to buy vinyl and to go with vinyl is...
I'm trying to think why I actually decided... Well, I wanted to learn on vinyl, but also a lot of things... my taste started kind of getting a little more underground, progressive house.
Right.
And house and things like that. That a lot of it wasn't available on CD.
And there were still a lot of record stores in Boston
Yes,
at the turn of that decade.
DJ-specific record stores.
Right. So you could find a lot of that vinyl. So... Did you practice at home before you got this inclination to play out in public? I mean,
yes,
did you play out in public like in the Boston area before you felt you were ready to do it, or did it just happen?
No, I did it. In fact, the place that I played, it was in Providence.
Right.
And I really don't remember the name of the place. I've looked.
Yeah.
I've asked around, but I can't. It was in a warehouse complex down by the highway, I think. And it had a front room, which was the mainstream room, and a back room, which they were trying to make more kind of an alternative.
And a friend of yours and you did this together.
Right.
He booked the night and got you guys to go down there together. So
and we both had turntables at that point, and were practicing on vinyl, and we planned our entire set out and had it rehearsed.
And did it stay that way when you got there?
Yes, it didn't deviate at all.
How nervous were you when you played that event?
I think we were both really nervous. I think we were, had the trembling hands on the needle, but
really,
yes,
yeah, it is kind
but
of.
it was very exciting.
Yeah, but it's really scary. The first, like, was that your first like real public sort of.
I think so.
Yeah,
that's
other than
the
house party in college. Yeah.
But beat mixing, and and you're worried about that. You don't want your train wrecks,
right?
So that's I think what we're most nervous about.
Right. Although we're probably more worried about it than anybody else.
Yes.
Although there are people in the audience sometimes who know what.
I would know a train wreck.
Right.
In the audience.
So you were. Okay, so you go through that night, and it goes pretty well, right?
And we got paid, which was exciting.
Right. So how long after that do you start thinking about doing your own, or about DJing, elsewhere? Because we talked about you going to, what was then Vapor, right? You used to hang out there, and there was a DJ, and J.I. was in the front for what? It must have been Saturday night. You were going
Saturdays at Vapor.
And then the other room, there was a DJ doing more progressive house music?
Yes, and it was kind of like a lounge, but that's kind of the music I was collecting and into at the time.
And his name was?
Mario.
But do you remember his last name offhand?
I don't.
Okay.
But he lives in Seattle now, I think.
Oh, okay. So he played a lot of progressive house in the back room at Vapor. And you and I talked a little bit about this the other night, too, that was, you kind of thought you might be able to find your way into playing at a place like that.
Right.
Right.
But that didn't kind of pan out at the time. I think, there were other people in my same position that wanted to do it too. And I don't know that I was I mean, I guess I was kind of ready, but maybe not.
Right. So
Not sure.
was there a sense of so there was a real competitiveness? Did you know a lot of DJs by then, like other DJs in the scene, or not really?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I did go to different nights, but I didn't know them personally.
Right. So you weren't. It was hard to sense just how competitive it was, but you could tell that it.
Right. I kind of already understood that you needed to kind of become that DJ's shadow, you know, and hang out there a lot. I didn't know that I wanted to devote all my time to going out every single night and just sitting by the DJ booth.
Because you were working a full-time day job
Right,
at
yes.
this time?
9 to 5 job.
Right, but you were also a lot younger, so going out
Was easier.
was easier, and getting up the next day and going to work probably wasn't quite the chore that it
wasn't
can be.
bad, yeah.
Right. So,
A Tractor DJ software had been around, but it was finally, laptops were finally powerful enough to run it,
right.
where it would actually work in public as a professional tool. So, and I finally got the software, I probably around 2001 or 2, where I had it on my laptop. So I was portable at that point.
Right.
And I didn't really want to play in a big club. I was kind of drawn to smaller places, and especially now that things had started changing, where there weren't as many gay clubs, there were a lot of bars around town, and I thought my music might be more appropriate for a bar, kind of a lounge scenario.
Right.
And also, I had realized in the meantime that the music I was into at that point didn't really click with the gay audience. So I really kind of wasn't even focusing on a gay club.
So you start going to alternative, like kind of indie nights, and you told me that I forget the name.
Gross Anatomy.
Gross
That's
Anatomy.
the first one.
That's the first one you really remember.
At the old Milky Way.
At the old Milky Way, right?
Center Street in JP.
Right. And that was with Stella.
Yes, and there were a number of DJs, but she was the main one I knew.
She was the main kind of okay. Stella's somebody else actually that we should talk to.
And she has a running night, a monthly night now at the new Milky Way called Laboom.
Laboom,
That's
right.
really good.
So she's been doing it for over a
Long.
decade now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to Gross Anatomy, and what's the crowd like?
It's a gay crowd, but it's more of an alternative gay crowd, and it's a good mix of gays and lesbians, and that was the first monthly night. That's when that idea kind
of being in a monthly instead of a week.
Instead of every week,
right?
But it was a really devoted crowd who would not miss it every month.
Now, when did Man Ray close? 05?
I think around then.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't happened yet at the time when the Gross Anatomy starts, but I'm sure that a place like Man Ray closing probably also results in a bit of a migration of people who don't have that to go to anymore, right? So that probably, I'm just speculating, but it might help alternative nights in the second half of that whole decade.
I
right?
wonder.
Like,
I can't remember. I mean, I actually was at Man Ray the night it closed.
Yeah.
But I had stopped, by that point, I had stopped going to campus, the Gay Thursday night, because I was just older than that crowd. I was too old for that crowd, I think.
Yeah.
Or they were too young for me, I guess.
Right.
But I would go there on Saturdays, which was a much more of a mixed night.
Right. Okay, so Gross Anatomy's an indie monthly, and then others start popping up, and this is where David Dancer comes into the picture.
And they had Hot Lunch was a big one. It would move around, but it was mostly in Austin, and that was a fun one.
And that was something David Dancer launched. Now, was this his first, or he DJ'd it at least?
He DJ'd it.
Now, was this one of the first times you encountered David, and then like in his sort of involvement?
I think so.
But then
he did a lot, though.
He did a lot.
That's probably the place that I would go see him the most. But I know at that point his name I heard all the time. Any kind of alternative dance, even just events, not nights, but events.
Right.
David Dancer was the kind of the go-to alternative gay DJ.
And he eventually becomes your connection to Ferngul. Of sorts, like I mean.
Well, he was the first DJ at Ferngul, but Sean was my connection to Ferngul.
Oh, okay. So he's doing all these alternative. Now you're not DJing anywhere really yet, though, right? I mean,
no, just events. I would do at that point. I did some events for like a graphic design group awards event.
And you did some fashion shows then? Okay,
several of those. And I like all. I think I like things like that.
Programming music for those kind of things can be just fun because your imagination can kind of go a little wilder and not have to worry about crowd response quite the same way. So, I mean, I think that one thing, something we forget about DJing sometimes is that it's not always about a dance floor.
No. Yeah,
Or it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be about a dance floor.
Right.
And it really depends on the kind of night it is. Sometimes you just want to create the vibe.
Right.
And it's a social time, and you want to kind of keep that going.
Right.